Sunday, August 5, 2012. This is Mercedes Diesel Guy, and this is my 1995 Subaru Legacy, the project car that is. I'm going to be replacing the rear struts today, and want to show you how to do that. Obviously, I already have the car supported off the wheels, and it's on a jack stand, and the wheel bolts are loose. So the first thing we're going to have to do is get to the upper strut mount. So there is, forgive me, it's a little difficult to get in here. There's a little plug here. I've got to pull that out in order to pull this cover off and get to the upper strut mount. So I'm gonna pull that plug out right now. As you can see, the plug is out, and that's the screwdriver I used to pry it out. So now you just pull off this cover piece right here. And now you can access the upper strut mount. Next, you remove the rear wheel. When removing the rear strut, you're actually going to have to disconnect the brake line here in order to feed it through the this bracket on the strut. That being the case, it's going to have the brake line will have to be disconnected from the caliper, and therefore, when you put this all back together, you're going to have to bleed everything out. So I highly recommend, before you go any further than this, making sure you can turn this bleed screw. And right now I'm in the process of trying to loosen it without breaking it. So once you have these bleeder screws ready to turn, and that's why I say make sure you can turn these before you take anything else apart, because if you can't, you're going to probably end up replacing the caliper. Once you have that done, you pull this clip right here, holding the brake hose to the bracket on the strut. Once you have that clip pulled, you'll see that the hose moves against the bracket here. Now, in order to feed it through, you actually have to undo this banjo bolt on the back of the caliper here. Now I believe this is a 12 millimeter bolt. Let me just check. Yeah, that's 12 millimeters. So you undo the bolt, and working very quickly, carefully, and cleanly, feed the hose through the hole on the bracket on the strut, and then just bring it back here and quickly cinch it back down against the strut. That way you'll avoid losing too much brake fluid. So I'm going to do that right now. Next, you remove the strut to hub bolts. Now these are 19 millimeter, just like the front, so you counterhold with a open-ended wrench here and loosen here, or at least that's. And once you have the bolts out here, that's the last thing holding the strut in on the bottom side of the car. And one quick word of warning: before you actually take these bolts out, make sure you get a jack just to lightly brace the hub here, because the strut is supporting everything here. So jack, will just help keep everything in place. So now you move to the inside of the car again, and you remove those 3 top nuts, which and once those nuts are off, you can lift off the cover plate. So now there's nothing actually holding the strut into the car, and you can very carefully just lift it out of here and wiggle it out of the car. And once you have the strut out of the car, you rebuild it. And I'm actually going to do a separate video on the rebuild process for the rear struts. Basically, at this point, bolting it back in is the reverse of installation, and I'll give you the torque specifications in just a second. Once the strut is roughly aligned inside the body, you take the spring cap here, and note that there is a marking for the outer side of it, although I can't see what difference it makes. And you place that on the strut, and then you tighten down the bolts. And the instructions I have that came with the strut say 10 to 18 foot-pounds in these. Once the top is in, you have to bolt in the bottom. So you got to get these bolts to align here, and then it'll be 98 to 119 foot-pounds on these. And once you have the strut bolted in, you just have to refasten the brake hose here. Now, thankfully, there's actually a notch in the new strut here, so I think I can probably get away with just feeding this through and then reinserting the clip. And once the brake line is taken care of, then all you really need to do is bleed out the brakes. And obviously I'm going to wait to do that until I do the strut on the other side of the car, but that's all there is to it. So this car should have a much nicer ride now. Thanks for watching.